Hello, and welcome back to Book Talk. On this episode, I'm delighted to introduce you to three of my friends, some of whom you have met before on prior episodes. But today, we're all here to talk about series starters and brand new series that they're starting with new books that are coming out this spring. I've got my friend Elizabeth Goddard, my friend Shelley Shephard Grey, and my friend Amanda Cabot. And they write all kinds of different books in different time periods, different genres. And Amanda, I think we'll start with you. If you'd like to introduce yourself real quickly, and then we'll talk about our books after we do introductions.
I'm Amanda Cabot, and I'm the author of more than 40 novels, 8 novellas, 4 technical books, and what I describe as enough technical articles to cure insomnia in a middle-sized city.
And Elizabeth, would you like to go next?
I'm Elizabeth Goddard, and I write romantic suspense for Love Inspired Suspense and Revell, and I've written over 50 romantic suspense novels. So,
yeah, I feel like I've written a lot of books, and then I get around y'all, and I'm getting ready to write book number 41 right now, and I'm feeling like I'm barely keeping up. And Shelley, how many millions of books have you written?
I've stopped counting, but I know, I think I'm around 110, 115 maybe.
That is amazing.
It is for someone who, didn't think she'd publish one book. I never cease to be amazed, but I'm thrilled and just, I love to write. So I'm blessed to write for a lot of houses. So, it's all good. I'm so appreciative.
And you write in the Christian market, you write a lot of Amish stories. And
yes, I do.
The book that you're starting your series with, the one that we're going to talk about today, is Amish. So tell us a little bit about this book and the series that you're launching.
Oh, I'll be delighted to. So I have it here, and the book is called Her Heart's Desire. And I'm telling you what, this cover is so beautiful. I just love how Revell does these gorgeous covers. One thing that's kind of fun about this is it's a 3-book trilogy, and all the books come out this year. So the first one came out in January, then we'll have a summer release, and then finally a November release, I believe. But they are Amish. Which something people don't realize is that the Amish go on vacation. And the popular place to go on vacation is a town called Pinecraft in the middle of Sarasota. So my setup for this book is 3 kind of wallflower girls meet on the Pioneer Trails bus, which it's a real thing. People take the bus down to Florida. There's kind of an ice storm. They end up in this hotel together, and they decide that they're going to be good friends and not worry about anything, but just having some new beginnings. And no, the best plans always goes awry. And so this first book, the heroine's name is Mary Margaret, and she falls in love.
Oh, I love that.
In a nutshell. Yeah.
I love it. And that is a perfect segue to Elizabeth's book, which is set in like bitterly cold Alaska. But when you talk about plans going awry, I endorse this one. And let me tell you, all the plans go completely awry from the beginning as they're freezing in Alaska and probably wishing they were in Florida. So how on earth did you come up with this whole and decide that this is where you were going to write your next series and decide on that setting and romantic suspense?
well, let me point out the cover again, because you had brought up what beautiful covers that Revell makes. And this is my absolute favorite. I mean, they just do such a fantastic job.
And the ice effect on that one is so cool.
It is. It's just beautiful. It's very eye-catching. And I know readers have been very excited about the cover. I actually had written a 6-book series called Mountain Cove with Love Inspired Suspense many years ago. And I had been thinking, gosh, I really want to go back to Alaska. And my book is set in Southeast Alaska, which if you've looked at the map of Alaska, there's the big mainland, and then down around kind of north of Washington and traveling up in the Inside Passage next to Canada, which, I mean, Alaska is the Panhandle, and it's Southeast Alaska where the story is set, which is quite a bit different than the mainland. And there's like over 1,000 islands. There's like all kinds of waterways and glaciers. It's just a whole mix of everything, including a temperate rainforest. So I was kind of thinking, to visit there. It's so beautiful. All my books really have a strong setting. I love setting, really inspires me. So I was actually researching my book, Deadly Target, which is book 2 in the Rocky Mountain Courage series. And I was watching a podcast because my main character was a podcaster. And I came across a podcast called Missing in Alaska. And I was like, that moment when you get chills, I know I've got to write, this is what my series is going to be about. So I presented that to my editor and she was all on board for that. So that was the next place to go, was Alaska. So I am still there writing book 3. So
That's awesome.
A lot of fun. So
all huddled up with your blanket and your hot tea going, okay, I'm still freezing in Alaska.
well, I mean, book 2, it is the summer and it's not really that, it's not cold. It's a temperate rainforest. It's cold, but not like freezing like you would think in the mainland Alaska. So it's all kinds of environments, which I love. I love to be able to write a variety of stories. So I'm having a lot of fun. And sometimes I have hot cocoa, but sometimes I've got my Dr. Pepper on ice.
There you go. And Amanda, your new series is set in the 1880s in the West, but it's not cowboys, which you had to correct me on because I always go Westerns and cowboys. So tell me, what is a Western and how's it different when you're writing it than maybe, like, I think Mary Keneally, I think Jody Headland, I think cowboys. And so what makes yours different and something that readers would really enjoy?
First of all, unlike Shelley and Elizabeth, my books are historicals, and they're historical romances with a mystery in them. I don't have the book yet, but here's the cover.
It's so gorgeous. I love that cover too.
Revell has given me consistently fabulous covers, but this one is just in a class of its own. I was absolutely thrilled when I saw it. And because if you look at this, you can see there's this house. And my books take place in the Texas Hill Country, which is arguably the most beautiful part of Texas. But houses like that are not what you would find there. I mean, the Texas Hill Country was settled primarily by very practical Germans. They wouldn't build a house like that. The house is actually a character in all 3 books. It's a connecting factor because the story is that this man from Alabama wanted to leave Alabama, and he just wanted to live someplace else. He comes to this small town in the hill country and says, this is where I want to live. Now, he wants to bring his fiancée with him, but her father, who is an Alabama plantation owner, says, oh, no. You can't marry her until you provide her with a house that is at least as good as the one that she's living in, your classic Southern plantation. So he builds this house, which is decidedly out of place in the hill country. Then the war between the states starts. He goes back to Alabama and is never heard from again. And the underlying mystery that doesn't get resolved until book 3 is what happened to this man. But meanwhile, there are mysteries in each of the books, which is why the series is called The Secrets of Sweetwater Crossing. And the main mystery in the first book, After the Shadows, is what happened to the heroine's father. She finds him hanging in the barn, and everyone assumes it's suicide, and she is the only person who will not accept that this is suicide. And so while she's falling in love, she is also trying to determine what is it that happened to her father.
Wow. So it sounds like there's a lot going on in your book too. And one of the things that I love as a reader is when I get to learn something. So whether it's learning about like the Amish going to Florida on vacation, which I hadn't thought about, or learning more about the hill country. And you're right, the time I've been to the hill country, it's beautiful, but you don't see big plantation houses like that, or, traveling to Alaska in a book. But I think one of the things that I enjoy the most is that idea that there's something that I'm going to learn, but that I'm transported. So how did you figure out what was going to be that thing for your series? Because there's always got to be that hook, that thing that gets you going, that goes, okay, I can build at least 3 books out of this. So for Elizabeth, what was it for this series? I mean, you knew it was going to be Alaska, but how did you get the idea that you were like, okay, now I've got everything I need for this series? Was it the podcast, or was there something more that allowed you to go, okay, now I can build 3 books out of this that are going to be really compelling?
Well, you have to sit down and brainstorm. And I just take a setting, as I mentioned, that inspires me. And to me, I could just live in this setting because I can think of 1,000 stories that just come to just because of the action adventure side of it. I just sat down and wrote blurbs, for the funny thing is, I sold these blurbs to Revell, but they know that when you get to the story time, they can all change, and a lot has changed. As I get to know the characters and write the first story, then I come up with kind of some new ideas or a new way to do the second story. So I think for me, and I know everyone's different, it really is a setting, and I know I can do action adventure, and I can always bring in bad guys. I don't really always know exactly what's going to happen. And because I'm a pantser, and I don't know if the rest of you are, but I don't even sometimes know who the bad guy is. So it's just,
you just know there's going to be mayhem, and something bad's going to happen.
Yes.
Well,
story.
And I mean, for you, it really was there are these people who kind of go missing because they go to Alaska to disappear, right?
Right.
So that's in and of itself, that premise is going to create a lot of chaos and opportunity for things to go wrong.
Right.
Fascinating. Amanda, so how did you get the idea for your series? The idea that did you go driving and you saw a house that looked out of place? Or, I mean, how did you come up with that idea?
I can't even tell you how I came up with that idea, other than it started, I knew my book was going to be set in the hill country, because although I've written a trilogy set in Wyoming, the hill country books are the ones that appeal to readers the most. So I'm sticking with that. And it started with, I knew I was going to have 3 sisters. I've done that before, but these sisters are different because they're more connected than the sisters were in my Wyoming series. So I have a lot of their personalities being dependent on birth order. And to make things even more interesting, it's part of a blended family. No 2 of them have the same 2 parents. And so that adds its own dimension to the story. So I had these 3 sisters. Then the house just popped up, it's like, okay. And of course, I love the Deep South and, those plantation houses with, Spanish live oaks with, the moss hanging down and all that. But you don't see that in that part of Texas. So I thought, wouldn't it be fun to put it there and have people always commenting on this house that is so out of place?
Yeah, that's really fun. And I think we all have those elements wherever we live, where we're like, what was that person thinking? I can think of a house that's a couple miles from here where I'm like, they weren't thinking, because it's never going to sell again, because it's just so doesn't fit. Now, Shelley, how did you get the idea to have, these 3 strangers meet on a bus on their way to Florida and just decide to go essentially on an adventure together? Is that something that you kind of planned, or did it just kind of come to you?
No, I had been wanting to do it for a while. I mean, the thing I like about Pinecraft, which is different than every other Amish community, is that everyone comes from different places. And it's really the only place in the world where Amish from every different community are all converged at, say, at Pinecraft Park. And so it's a great opportunity to learn how other people live, right? And it's also a great opportunity to start over. If you are Amish and you're a sheltered girl and you're in an Amish community, you may not see very much of the outside world at all. And if, say, you don't quite fit in, then you might be just dying to have a chance to start over, like maybe meet some people that don't know every stupid thing you did when you were 14, right? And so that's kind of I've always been loving that idea of it. I've written a series set in Pinecraft before, and I've been there a lot, and so I enjoyed it. And I just thought this was a series with girls that didn't quite fit in. I just thought there was a real rich area. I think we can all agree that wherever we are, there might be a time in our life where we didn't feel like we were a perfect fit, whether it was in middle school or in college or in the first job or you name it, Newtown. So I don't know. I love to write stories that my characters just happen to be Amish. And so this is
Yeah.
something that they could all relate to.
But I think that's what you said is so true. We all have those moments where we're like, man, I just didn't fit. And if I could just start over where nobody knew me and nobody knows that stupid thing I did that I can't forget about, or that somebody won't let me forget about. And so that idea that we could just kind of slide into a new area and a new life is just really, it can be really appealing.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, and especially that sometimes we think that we didn't fit in, and everyone thinks you fit in just fine. Or everyone thinks, oh, you're always remembering this thing in my past. No, everyone's gotten over it. You're the one that hasn't gotten over it. So anyway, it's just a human nature thing. So that's yeah, you're right. We can all relate to it in somehow.
Yeah, which is so fun. And I love the idea of, it doesn't matter what time period we're writing. It doesn't matter what cultural aspect we're pulling out. Readers can relate to these characters, and they can relate to them whether they're in 1883 Texas Hill Country or Florida in the Amish community, or up in Alaska with these really rugged individuals who are scraping an existence out of the last frontier. And so y'all do just such an amazing job creating these characters and these settings. And I love how each of you make your setting a character. You really couldn't pull these stories out and just plop them in another place and have it be the same story. The setting is really important. So when you're thinking about that, and now that you're on book 2 or 3, or Shelley, you're probably on to the next series and more because you've got all 3 coming out this year. How do you start coming up with that next idea? Do you focus on the setting first, or do you look for that spark of character idea? Where do you start? So Elizabeth, where do you start when you're coming up with your next idea?
Well, I think I already probably can guess setting. I really do. Setting inspires me. That really is the inspiration for all of my stories. Just to know that I'm going to set something. I see a place that is just so gorgeous, or I want to visit it, or I want to explore it, or find out more about it. And I just start thinking of what can happen there. And I find out everything.
Where are you going to go next then? After Alaska?
I'm working on my next proposal idea, and I don't know. I'm could be just, I'm going to be staying in the Pacific Northwest, or I could actually add some more stories to Alaska. I'm not sure, but I love the Pacific Northwest. It's got the mountains and the waterways and the ocean. It's just got everything that I need for an action setting, and a metropolitan. So I can add all the crime that I need, add all the murder and mayhem that I need. So,
well, and you've also got that element of the danger coming from the environment. You can have that man against nature as well as the man against man.
Yeah, and that is in every one of my books. So
yeah, it definitely is. And Amanda, I'm going to guess you're going to go back to Texas.
There's a character, a very, very minor character who shows up. She's mentioned in the first book. She is seen at the beginning of the second book. And my plan is to make her the heroine of the first book in the next series. Now, she'll be leaving the town that she's in at that point, because Ravel likes me to use slightly different settings. So I come up with a new fictional town for each one of the trilogies. But that's my thought at this point. I haven't gotten too far beyond saying that, because I'm still writing the third book in this particular series.
Don't you love it though, when you have who you think is a minor character who starts going, hey, wait a minute, I've got a story. Don't forget about me.
I had one time when, back when I was writing for the secular market, and I woke up in the middle of the night saying, Sam needs a bride. Now, Sam was a really, really minor character, didn't even say a word in one book. I went, okay, Sam, you woke me up. You're going to get a bride, but trust me, it's not going to be an easy road. I'm gonna get- wreak some vengeance on him for spoiling my sleep. But yeah,
I
it's
love that.
fun when that happens.
That is. I also love that as the author, you can make it a really miserable journey to the altar.
Yes.
We'll know. So Shelley, how about you? Will you stay in Florida, or how do you plan what your next series is going to be?
I usually plan a trilogy, I think like all of y'all do, or a series. So yeah, the next two books are all in Pinecraft in this series, which was fun. And then for the next Amish books, I think I'm doing one series back in Ohio because I live just south of Cleveland, so I'm an hour from all my Amish friends. So it's just easy research for me to have it in this neck of the woods. And then I might be doing a series set in Southern Kentucky, which I've set a book there too. It's just a different flavor. So I'm excited. I love starting a new series. And it is exciting. And I'm just smiling at Amanda at characters talking because I've definitely had that happen too. It's fun to hear how all of y'all think. Sometimes you think I'm the only one that has people talking to me, but no, I'm not alone. So.
Yeah. I always love how when we're at the American Christian Fiction Writers Conference, at the very opening session, Brandon Collins is always like, now remember, y'all, there are normals out there, and the normals don't expect us to be talking, about all the things we talk about here, whether it's how to kill people or talking to the people in our heads and all of that. And so you've talked some about how now, Elizabeth, you're a pantser. And Shelley, are you a pantser or are you a plotter? Do you know exactly what's going to happen when you start writing, or do you just kind of take it as it comes?
I like to think I'm a pantser, but not quite as much as Elizabeth. I mean, luckily, most of my books are very romance driven, and so I've got my hero heroine. I've got all their goal, motivation, and conflicts, and I know that they're going to have a happy ending. And I usually plot, at least I have plot points every fourth of a novel. Before I start, I'm like, okay, I know that there's going to be a shift and there's something big's going to happen. I do those, but after that, I like to play along. I love when I'm writing along and all of a sudden someone's on my page and I'm like, don't know you, but I guess you're going to be in my book. So that's the fun. That's the best part of when writing's good. Writing isn't always great every day, but days like that are what we live for, I think.
Yeah. How about you, Amanda? I don't remember. Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I am a plotter, an extreme plotter.
I thought you were. I thought you and Elizabeth were opposite.
Oh, but I mean, I write my one-page synopsis, which is the selling synopsis, and then I do a chapter by chapter outline. I write down all the scenes that have to happen in the book. Then I put them in what appears to be, don't shake your head, Elizabeth, there's more to this story. I put them in what appears to be logical order, and that's my chapter by chapter outline. And I write my first draft from that. And I know exactly what's going to happen. Right. By the time I get to the end of the first draft, a lot has changed. And I realize, because I know my characters so much better. Now, mind you, when I do that chapter by chapter outline, I am sure I know my characters. I am sure that everything that I have plotted makes sense. But when I finish the first draft, which I refer to as the skeleton, and like a Halloween skeleton, it's kind of ugly. When I finish that and go back and do the second draft, which is where I put on the flesh and blood and it becomes a decent looking thing, sometimes I make not major changes, but a fair number. For example, the second book in this series, I changed one character completely. I mean, he had been kind of obnoxious. And I didn't like him. I didn't like the way he treated the heroine. So I turned him into a secondary suitor, one that she might marry, which was a pretty dramatic change.
Yeah.
But so I'm a plotter, but
Yeah,
life changes, the story
I like
changes.
that.
See,
Well,
Elizabeth, I'm closer to you than you might think.
But and I think that that's actually really organic, because there's a certain element of, you can think you know your characters, and then as you're spending time on the page with them, you realize, oh, I thought this was going to work and now I know them better and this doesn't. And it's just a point of how much discovery we do ahead of time versus how much discovery we're doing as we're writing. Okay, so last question for you. What are some key elements of a heroine that you can root for? And usually we talk about a hero, but I thought, let's talk about heroines, because this is the character I struggle with. For some reason, heroes I can write, no problem, all day, every day. It's the heroines I struggle with. So Elizabeth, what do you think are key elements of a heroine? And she's like, dang it, she can't called on me for
I had it all thought out for the hero, because that's
Oh,
it's okay. It's okay. I mean, some of the same elements for the heroine. I need for her to root for, she needs to be thoughtful and considerate of others, and not be self-absorbed. And she can be somebody that we can count on, that everybody can count on, strangers can count on, and lost puppies can count on.
yeah, I like that. Shelley, how about you?
I love a heroine that you can relate to. So that's always my number one goal is, no matter what she's thinking, even if I might not make the same decisions, can I be like, yeah, I see why you did this silly thing, or you are braver than I would be, or whatever. So that's always for me. I love to have a hero that's so trustworthy and honest, but I love a heroine that you're just like, you know what, you could be my best friend, at least for a little while. So
Yeah, I love that. How about you, Amanda?
She needs to be strong, very strong, and yet vulnerable at the same time, because that makes her more, as Shelley would say, more relatable. We want characters who are larger than life, and yet they've got to be believable. And so that means there has to be some vulnerability, something in the heroine's past or in her personality that has wounded her, and she needs to heal from that. Because my books tend to focus on the healing power of love, whether it's the love between a man and a woman or God's love for us. But in order to have healing, you've got to have had those wounds. And so that's part of what I think is essential for a good heroine.
I love that. Okay, and Elizabeth, what is essential for a hero?
Everything I just said for the hero.
Okay.
Relatable and trustworthy, and just to be a strong person that by his actions, you don't even have to know who he is, but you can just tell by his actions, he's somebody that we can trust, and he's going to come through for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you all for being with me today. This was so much fun. And I just know readers are going to love discovering these first books in your brand new series. And really, no matter what you like to read, you're going to love these, because we have covered Amish, we have covered romantic suspense, and we have covered historical Western set in Texas in the 1880s. So we have got it all covered in today's episode. So thank you so much for joining us. And it has been a true pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Kara.